Welcome back to another video. I hope you're doing great today. In this video, we're going to be talking about percent problems. Okay, so percent problems. So first of all, let's talk about what a percentage is. So a percentage represents an amount of a whole, right? It represents how much of that whole is represented. And so percents usually go up to 100% typically, but they could be higher than 100%. So when we talk about percent, we're talking about numbers like 30%. So that means how much of the whole is represented. 30% of the whole is represented. One of the things we need to know for working percent problems is how to convert percents to decimals. So if I have 30%, because whenever I use percents in math, it has to be converted to a decimal. So if I have 30% and I need to convert it to a decimal, then here is the decimal right here in 30%, but I will move it, like Beyonce say, to the left, to the left. So 2 times to the left. And so that will become 0.30 as a decimal. So remember, whenever you want to convert a percent to a decimal, think of to the left, everything you own in a box to the left. I can't sing, but I'm trying my best, right? But that'll help you remember that 2 times to the left, move the decimal 2 times to the left, and your percentage will be converted to a decimal. So another thing we need to know when dealing with percent problems is we need to know keywords and what they translate to. So some keywords include the word what. Anytime you see the word what, that's going to represent your unknown, your variable. So I'm going to call it X, but you could call it anything. You could call it Y, you could call it M, you could call it T. It doesn't matter, but I'm using X because that's the commonly used variable that we use in algebra. So whenever you see what, that represents X. Whenever you see is, that represents equal. We talked about that in another video, but is represents equal. Whenever you see the word of, we talked about that one in another video as well, that represents multiplication. So I want you to know that this X is the variable X. This X represents multiplication. So let me write that out. And then whenever you see a percent, you have to change it to a decimal. Alrighty, so these are a few things you need to know when dealing with percent problems. So whenever you see the word what, it represents the variable X. Whenever you see the word is, it represents equal. Whenever you see of, it represents multiplication. And whenever you see the number as a percentage, you want to convert it to a decimal, okay? So let's work some examples. Example 1, we want to know what is 15% of 600. So let's go through and translate this word into an equation. So using our keywords that we just talked about. So what represents the variable X? Is represents equal. 15% has to be, because it's a percentage, it has to be converted to a decimal. And remember, how do you convert a percent to a decimal? Think of Beyonce, to the left, to the left. So the decimal is here. You move it to the left 2 times, which makes it now 0.15. Of means multiplication, so I'm going to put a dot there so that I won't think it's another X. And then 600. So this is how I would solve the problem. I want to solve for X. In this case, to solve for X, all I do is multiply 0.15 times 600, which gives me 90. So X is equal to 90. So what is 15% of 600? 15% of 600 is 90, okay? So let's work another example. Example 2, 32% of what number is 64? So again, the first thing we want to do is translate these words to an equation. So 32%, because it's a percentage, you have to convert it to a decimal. So remember, how do you convert this to a decimal? The decimal is here, and move it to the left 2 times, it'll be here. So that's 0.32. Of means multiply. What means your variable X, so that represents what number. Is represents equal, and then 64. So all you're doing is going through changing your keywords to operations. So 0.32 times X equals 64. We need to solve for X. Since this is 0.32 times X, to get rid of 0.32, you would divide 0.32. So X is equal to, because these will go away, 64 divided by 0.32. I'm going to plug that in my calculator. And I get 200. So X is equal to 200. So that means 30. That means 64 is 32% of 200, because the question was 32% of what number is 64. So it would be 200. So if I take 32% of 200, that will give me 64. All right, let's look at another example. Example 3, we want to know 90 is what percent of 360. So in this particular problem, if you notice, it doesn't have a percentage in it, but it wants us to find a percent. So we want to keep this in mind for when we get our final answer. So we're going to go through, we're going to translate this to an equation, but then our final answer is going to be a percent. So we're going to get it as a decimal, but we're going to have to convert it to a percent. So let's see what we have. We have 90 is represents equal. What percent? So what represents the variable x? But we have to know that x is represent a percent now. Of means multiplication and then 360. So we've translated to an equation, and now we just solve the equation. We need to solve for x. That's x times 360. So to get rid of 360, we will have to do the opposite of multiplication, which is division. And so we will do 90 divided by 360. 90 divided by 360 is 0.25. And so 0.25 represents our percent, but as a decimal. So now to convert a decimal back to a percentage, since we went to the left 2 times to convert a percent to a decimal, then we're going to go the opposite direction to go back to a percent. So now we're going to go to the right 2 times. So 0.25, move the decimal to the right 2 times, and you end up with, so that gives us 25%. That's a 5. So 25% is your answer. So 90 is what percent of 360? 90 is 25% of 360. Okay, let's do another example. So for example 4, this last example is a word problem. And the word problem says that a newspaper ad offered a sale on a set of tires for $258. The regular price was $300. What percent of the discount? What percent of the regular price was the discount? Okay. What percent of the regular price was the discount? So what do we have? We have a set of tires that were on sale for $258. We have the regular price was $300. So sales price $258. Regular price $300. We want to know what percent discount was given. So first of all, what is the discount? So to figure out the discount, so the discount is going to be found by taking the original price and subtracting the sales price from it. So that's going to let you know how much money you save. You subtract $258 from $300, you get $42. So you save, if you buy these tires, you're saving $42, right? So what percent discount is that? So basically what you want to know is what percent of 42, or what percent of 300, is 42? That's the question. Because you're trying to figure out what is this percentage discount of the original price? Like how much did they take off? Did they take off 10%? Did they take off 20%? Did they take off 30%? So that's what you're trying to calculate. So what transfers to the variable x? And this x represents a percentage. So that means when we find our answer, we're going to have to come back and convert it to a percent. Of means multiply. 300 is means equal 42. So what percent of 300 is 42? And so we want to solve for x, and we'll solve for x by getting rid of the 300. So we'll divide both sides by 300, and we get x is equal to 42 over 300, which when I divide that out, I get 0.14. So 0.14 represents the decimal, but remember, we have to go back and convert it to a percent. So what percent? So 0.14 as a percentage, you would go the opposite way of Beyonce. You'll go to the right. So that'll be 14%. You'll go to the right twice. So your answer will be 14%. So they gave a 14% discount by selling the tires for $258 when the original price was $300. So this concludes our percent problems. And basically you just need to know what the terms mean, what represents a variable, Is represents equal, of represents multiplication. You also need to know how to convert from a percent to a decimal. You go to the left, move the decimal to the left 2 times. And then you also need to know how to go from a decimal to a percent. You move it to the right 2 times, okay? So hopefully this helps you. If it did, hit the like button. If you have any questions whatsoever, you can put them in the comments and I will respond. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.